Hello and welcome back to another special and fantastic video with the majestic host, the Savior. Yes, trust me, I am very majestical, and that is a proper word in the English dictionary. Welcome back, my wonderful wise ones, and if you are new to the channel and perhaps you're not a wise one, then what are you doing, okay? What are you doing with your life? Become a wise one today and do subscribe. It would mean so much to me, you have no idea, so thank you if you do subscribe, but by all means, watch the video, decide at the end, and subscribe if you like the video, and if you do find yourself enjoying it, do consider giving it a like, because that does help the YouTube algorithm, which I am a slave to. And sadly, that is what decides my fate. I can work on YouTube all day, all day, and still the YouTube algorithm, if it doesn't bless a video, yeah, it's all for nothing. So do support my work and give it a like, and consider checking out my music on Spotify or dropping a small donation to support an independent creator. So I'm not going to do a long intro for this one. If you're a wise one, you already know. If you enjoy gaming content and looking at things with a philosophical lens, analyzing them, if you're a fan of yearly reviews where I look and analyze older games, or you want early access day one coverage of new games, I do all of that here and some philosophical videos. So join the channel today, become a wise one. But that's all I have to say. So let's just get into this Sandland review. Okay, this is the Sandland game review. This is a review based on the early access content, okay? Now, this did catch my eye, and I've got to be honest, I'm not a huge anime fan. There's some animes that I really like Devilman Crybaby, Death Note, of course, being one, or some obscure other ones, which I won't get into. But I'm not a huge anime fan myself, and I've never really gotten into Dragon Ball. But as a game, okay, this world and this universe really stood out to me, and especially the character design and all that kind of stuff. And I have dabbled with some Dragon Ball, but honestly, this is very interesting to me because it isn't connected to Dragon Ball, but it is made by the same creator, may he rest in peace. So basically, this is the last kind of creation we're going to get from the creator of the Dragon Ball franchise. I hope this game doesn't get overlooked and it will get the attention it deserves. It's not just a random anime game, you know, and a lot of them are just kind of cash grabs and they just kind of do the same thing. This is a proper AA game, I would say, and it does do a lot of interesting stuff, even for people who aren't fans of Sandland. Just as an interesting kind of Mad Max anime spin-off game, I think this is quite interesting. So this game is actually heavily story focused, and the characters in this surprised me, okay, because from what I've seen so far, they're actually very lovable, and it's about magical friendships. No, but honestly, the writing here actually surprised me. It's not that corny, the story is actually interesting, and the characters can be funny at times. It's got a nice balance of, you know, obviously not taking itself too seriously, but at the same time, the tone of this game just works, and the characters do a good job of making you feel, you know, invested in this world, this game world. So basically, you play as the son of the literal devil himself. I'm not joking, which is a pretty badass setup, and I do love me some demonic stuff, especially when it comes to manga and anime. But I do like that setup, and the characters, like I said, that you travel with are quite interesting. But what really stood out to me with this game was the gameplay, okay? So it's a mixture of on-foot, beat 'em up, kind of Devil May Cry-esque combat, where you're, you know, chaining combos together, and then vehicle, almost Mad Max style gameplay. And for some reason, they did dungeons with vehicle gameplay. And yes, that does sound like a clusterfuck, and believe me, it is at times, but sometimes it actually works quite nicely. So yeah, I'm going to get into that later, but it's quite a weird design approach, I'll say. But also, this is an open world game, and there are positives to that and there's negatives to that. It does do kind of the stereotypical open world design approach. It's not a complete Ubisoft world, but at times it does feel very tired and played out and a little bit barren. But also there are times in the open world where the gameplay actually feels fresh and different from other open world games. But when you're clearing out camps and stuff like that, that's when it feels the most generic. But when you're doing unique vehicle boss battles out in the open world, that's when it feels like something special. And it brings me back to the older days of gaming. You know, it reminds me of something I would have played on the PS2. In some ways, it even reminds me of Jak 3, when you're in the desert. If anyone remembers the Jak series, Jak and Daxter I'm talking about, it just has nice old school vibes to it, and I do love the design of the vehicles and the art style here. So let's now get into the positives and negatives. That's what I do with my early access reviews, the early content for upcoming games. So I do hope you enjoy this one, and like I said, do subscribe if you are new. So this game juggles a lot of different mechanics, I would say, and some it does very nicely, and others, like I said, it fails at. The open world being a barren wasteland does make sense, considering this is Sandland, and like I said, it does remind me of that old school kind of design approach that Jak and Daxter 3 did, and in some ways it's charming, but in other ways it does kind of just regurgitate the open world, safe design philosophy of going into some random dungeons, some random caves, doing basic puzzles to get resources and clearing out camps of enemies. But there are unique things to be found out there, and some pretty cool stuff that I won't spoil. And I do like the fact that you can discover, cities, okay? That's all I'll say, big locations, and they are fleshed out, and, they're actually inhabited, and you can go around and really soak in the atmosphere. That's very cool, meeting interesting NPCs and stuff like that. And the main city that you are based in, okay, you can actually customize this, and it changes and evolves over time, as well as your player home, which kind of is a light version of Animal Crossing to some regard, because you have your own house basically that you can customize and tweak, which adds, a nice layer of customization. This game is very focused on customization when it comes to your character build and when it comes to your vehicle. So it looks very surface level, but actually there is a lot of depth here when it comes to customizing your 5 vehicles that you can have equipped on you at any time basically, and then the customization of your character when it comes to the skill tree and stuff like that. So I would say that is the first major positive, is the customization here on offer actually surprised me, and it's not like the basic, percentage increase when you upgrade yourself, when you upgrade your stats and your perk tree, for example, you actually unlock new abilities like massive AoE attacks and some pretty cool stuff, and especially when you're tweaking and customizing your vehicles as well. You can basically customize the vehicles to be heavy tanks or lightweight vehicles that can kind of zap around and get behind enemies. So I do like that customization. So basically, to customize, you need to collect resources and parts, okay? And like I said, it does remind me kind of a light version of Mad Max, a more casual kind of, well, I wouldn't say casual because it's a lot of depth, but I mean it's more family friendly, I'll say, of compared to Mad Max. But I do like that, you're scavenging and you're looking for resources to upgrade your vehicles and stuff like that. So that doesn't really get old. And you do find dungeons which you will have to use your vehicles in. And I kind of like that they went for a kind of Metroidvania style, when you find a dungeon and you have to use a certain vehicle type to progress throughout that dungeon. But at times it does feel a bit clunky. But overall, the customization here is good, and you can even change things like cosmetics, like the color of your vehicles and stuff like that. Even when you're upgrading your character, it's not just you that you can upgrade. You can actually customize your, team that follows you around. That plays into the type of build that you want. So for example, if I want to focus mostly on vehicle combat and not so much, hand-to-hand combat, you can get one of your companions to upgrade, their stats when it comes to vehicle combat, instead of focusing on upgrading a character that might support you, like with buffs and stuff like that. The negative, I would say, is the open world. At times it can be cool, but a lot of the times it just feels like, random spawned in enemies, go there and clear out a bunch of enemies, and There's not much variation between the lands. You do get the sand land, of course, and the forest lands. That's all I've seen so far. But I just feel like they could have made this a much more compelling open world when it comes to exploration and really focus on that discovery aspect. But instead, it's very much, these are the activities that you can do, go and do them, and that's it. So now let's quickly talk about some of the combat, which did surprise me. Now, this isn't going to be a very difficult game, but it is a fun game to play, and surprisingly, the combat here was much more fleshed out than I thought it was, okay? And there is a lot of different combos that you can pull off when you are, fighting hand to hand, and especially the vehicle combat. That's where I got the most joy from. And you can choose, what type of vehicle you want to fight in. If you want to be a tank, if you want to be a quick, bike to zap around enemies, but also you can be goddamn mechs. And I just love that customization. And of course, some enemies will be weaker depending on the vehicle type that you choose, and some stronger, or just beating them up like they're goddamn peasants with your massive mech. That is quite satisfying. And the combat, like I said, did surprise me because it has a nice feedback to it, and it can be challenging, especially against bosses, which have a massive area of effect. So you will be, kind of chased around by these big bosses, and you have these massive arenas to fight them in, which I did like. That was like the highlight, I would say, was fighting bosses. And of course, hand-to-hand combat, it has the basic stuff, but like I said, as you upgrade yourself with the perk tree or skill tree, whatever you want to call it, you unlock actual interesting abilities, and basically the more you level up in that, the more interesting it will be, because you can unlock, special moves. And I like the fact that you can juggle enemies midair and stuff like that. That to me is always fun. And if you're not ready, because this is like a leveled system with the enemy types, you can make this either a difficult experience for yourself or an easy experience, and I like that customization. Like I said, this game, I would say, doesn't do one particular thing very well, maybe apart from the vehicle combat. Everything else, it borrows ideas from, different genres of games, but it has so many moving parts to it that actually I found myself enjoying this game quite a lot. And I think that's a super interesting mechanic where you can't really recover fully until you resupply on water and stuff like that, and it makes encounters much more dangerous. And even though the exploration is lacking, I would say, and a lot of the places feel the same, that is a magical moment when you discover a new location, far off in the distance. You just look at it far off in the distance and you go and see what's there, and then you get surprised by a boss or perhaps an encounter. It doesn't do anything particularly new, but what is here was actually surprising and a lot of fun. And I do like how the characters, have chit-chats in between just exploring the open world, and it makes it feel much more alive and not just that you're looting for resources and stuff like that. But of course, it does have that Ubisoft open world gameplay with some aspects like radio towers, unlocking new areas of the map, clearing out camps. That stuff feels tired, but when it surprises you with interesting encounters, that's when I feel like Sandland is interesting, and it's for those people who love vehicle combat games. And usually with those games, you're only tied to a vehicle, but here you can actually explore on foot, you can go into towns, and I really love that. We don't get many games like that. And it does such a good job with the vehicle combat and fighting these big enemies and bosses. To me, even though the open world is kind of lacking, the dungeons are kind of lacking, the puzzle design is kind of meh and very basic, when you're fighting these big bosses and you're leveling up your vehicles, customizing them, and then you can even customize your own, hometown and your player base, I think this will appeal to that type of player who loved Mad Max, for example. And finally, I have to talk about the kind of Metroid-esque progression in this game, which again surprised me. So for example, you can't get to all locations. It depends on what kind of vehicle you have access to. So for example, some locations might be walled off by something you need to blow up with a heavy gun from like a tank, or you can't get across, water to this cave without a hovercraft. So I do like that they kind of wall off areas, and then you can come back to them later. So I think that is quite a special blend, and especially they did that with the dungeons. But the only problem with the dungeons is it's very one-note design. So you have to complete the puzzle by using this vehicle type. and at times you can actually cheese it, but it's not designed to be cheesed like something like Zelda Breath of the Wild is. So that is my Sandland review, my Sandland game review. I do hope you enjoyed this one. Overall, I would say that this game is worth it. Perhaps wait on a sale. If you're not heavily into vehicle combat games, maybe give this one a miss, but it does have a nice arcadey RPG flavor to it, and it is trying to do something unique, which is more than most games, I'll say. And I hope a lot of people don't just look over this game and miss out on it because they just think it's a generic open world game and it's just an anime game, and it's not trying to do something new. It's just trying to regurgitate the source material. No, this is its own unique story, and it's not just a cash grab anime game. It's actually doing something different. And I hope this video answered, is Sandland worth it, or should you play Sandland? And I believe this could be worth it. It just depends on the player you are, and I hope you weighed up those pros and cons. This is a very mixed game because a lot of them are pros and only a few negatives, I would say. It just depends if you like this type of experience, but I do hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Have a great day. Peace out.